Hi, my name is Nina, and I run this page, Visionary Ambition, where it's a place for us to talk about how mental health affects people of color. And it's a place to find healing, growth, and community. And so I want to tell you my story of being diagnosed bipolar 8 years ago. And, hopefully just give you a better understanding of who I am and my ambition and the reason behind me starting this project. So 8 years ago, I was diagnosed bipolar. At the time, I was 24 years old. I had 5 children, and I was going to school. I was working. I was, trying to do the best I could to come out of the situation that I was in. Me and my husband, we were living with his mother, and we had just come from living with his mother, and we had before that we had lived with his grandmother, and we were just like moving around with our kids, and I was feeling really, pressure to just make all my dreams come true, really do everything that I set out to, and I was going to school for medical billing and coding, and I was just really focused, and I was trying my best to just manage school life. We didn't have a car. I was touching a bus. I was walking. It was a struggle, and so all of a sudden I wasn't sleeping. It would be like days where I would be up. I would just be up, and I had insomnia, and I remember just starting to feel like I was getting signs through the TV. Like I would feel like the TV was communicating with me. I would think that um, I was getting messages from God to come up out of the situation that I was in. I remember one day I was just writing on the walls. I was feeling like I didn't know where these messages were coming from, but I would just write different things on the walls in my room. And, I knew that I was losing touch with reality, but I didn't know how to stop it. So one day I walked myself to the doctor and I told him, I couldn't sleep. I was paranoid. I thought that my husband was out to get me. And at the time, like, he wasn't working and I was just feeling overwhelmed. And maybe I was thinking, like, he didn't have my best interest at heart, even though I knew he loved me. It was just, I was really paranoid. My parents weren't around. Um, my mom was in prison. My dad was in prison. And I was just, I was really confused. And so I went to the doctor and they didn't give me any medication. But I just remember I walked away and I would come in and out of consciousness. So I would find myself in different places and not know how I got there. So I walked to the park and I would just be walking around and my mind would race and I would sing different songs. I would sing songs that had meaning to them. And I would sing songs about God, about Jesus. And I would sing, but then I would come in and out of knowing being a part of reality. It was like I didn't know, I was in a different realm. And so, I spent the whole day walking around like lost, not knowing where I was going, just in and out of reality. Just my mind racing and singing songs, walking up and down the street. So I finally found my way back to my mother-in-law's house. I got there and I talked to her about like a lot of the things that was going on within my families, within my relationship, and just kind of vented and let it all out. And so next thing I know, they take me to the hospital. And at the hospital, I was telling them things like I was I didn't think that I was a Virgin Mary, but at the time, when I met my husband, I was a virgin. He's the only person that I've been with. I had all my 5 kids by him through C-section, and I told myself that I had like sacrificed my life in the name of love, and that's what I thought that God was telling me, that I had been a sacrifice, and that I was here to show love and spread love and be light, and that was the message that I got. But I was faced with all this confusion. Like in the middle of that, I would feel energy. Like I can go by people and I could feel their energy. I could feel if they were a good person. I could feel if they were a bad person. I would know things about people and I wouldn't know how I knew them. And so, I went. So when they took me to the hospital, I told them my story. I told them all about my childhood. I had parents who had struggled with addictions, were in and out of incarcerations. I went to like 8 to 10 different elementary schools. I lived with so many different family members. And so I had been somebody who had to just adapt to every situation that I was in because I had to learn how to survive. And so, I had been in survival mode my whole life. And I had always, like, before I had my kids, I helped take care of my younger siblings. And I was like a mother figure to them. I would wash their clothes. I would cook for them. I would clean for them. I would teach them how to read. I would do everything I could to just believe that our lives will get better, and that through our struggle, like, God will bring us happiness, and we will receive all the gifts of the world. Like, no matter what we went through, I can say that we had grandmothers who would tell us to go to church. And so church would be an outlet, and we would go to church, and we would feel God's love, and we would sing for God, and we would just know that we were blessed, and that we were chosen to be a light of hope in the world. And that's something that we believed as little girls. Is that something that I held on to? But then at the same time, I started struggling. I started questioning God. I was in a place where I was questioning myself. I was questioning my worth. I was questioning everything. And so having that breakdown, and then being at the hospital, I told them all about my childhood, and I told them all about my life, and I just couldn't stop. I couldn't stop talking about myself. I couldn't stop talking about the things that I had seen, things that I had been through. And I was angry at my husband for some of the ways that he treated me, even though he was good to me for the most part. We had our ups and downs. We were young and in love and trying to grow. I was angry at my parents for neglecting me and abandoning me. I was just full of so much hurt and so much anger. I was, being a young mom, having so many kids at a young age. I was 24, 25. Having so many kids at such a young age, I felt really overwhelmed and judged by a lot of people. And so, I went through the space to where I was just like, I was in a place where I was just venting. I was venting everything. I was telling people exactly how I felt. I had no filter. I was just blunt, and I was hurt, and I was just, I was angry at a lot of things about my life. And, I let it all out. And so they ended up hospitalizing me. I went to a hospital out here where I'm at. And, while I was in the hospital, it was like, people would talk to me, and I would hear their words, but I was reading their energy. And it was like my intuition was telling me things about people that I didn't know. Like strangers, I would know things about them. And so, at the first time at the hospital, it was like I went there, and the people would just tell me their life stories. I'm a patient, but I remember the lady who checked me in, she started talking to me about her mom. Her mom had just passed away. And she started talking, she was crying. She was telling me about her life and the things that she had been through. And, I was telling her about my story. And then, she was looking at my body and just looking me in my eyes and just telling me, her mom had just passed away. And then they put me in a room with the lady. She was battling demons. And while I was laying down, I felt her energy. And it was so strong. Like, her energy was just like she was really going through something. She was in like a dark space. She was in a dark place. And she she would talk to herself, and it was like she was trying to put her energy off of me, but she couldn't. It was like she wanted me to be angry. She wanted to get a reaction out of me. She would say things, but I would just still show her love. And then she would tell me that I wasn't meant to be there. Eventually she just told me, you're not supposed to be here. You're not supposed to be here. And then there was another Asian lady that I met, and she had just tried to commit suicide. And so she would talk to me, and she would come to me, and she would tell me her life story, and she would tell me things about her. And these are all strangers that I'm meeting at the mental health institution, but for some reason, they're coming to me, and they're telling me things about themselves, about their lives, about what they've been through, their stories. And I'm just listening. I'm listening to them. I'm listening to what they've been through. She tried to commit suicide. She had lost her mom, and she was in a really dark place. So both these ladies, maybe they felt my mothering in me. They had both lost their mothers, and they wanted to talk to me, and they wanted to tell me their story. And so I listened. And so, while I was there, I would feel things like I was supposed to be, I would feel energy, walk with your head held high. So I would walk with my head held high. And I don't even know, one time I was even walking up and down the hallway like it was a runway. And I was just spreading love, spreading love. I don't know how to say it, but it was just I was pushing off good energy. But it was still I felt the negative vibes, and I could feel it, literally pins and needles, in my body. I could feel the negative energy from the people who were struggling. And there was a man. He was a dark-skinned man, and it was at one point, one of the older ladies, she was Haitian, and she pulled me away, and she took me into a room by myself, and she told me to stop talking to people, and that I wasn't supposed to be saying the things that I was saying, and that, I was going to get out of here. She asked me about my family. She asked me about my heritage. She asked me about where I come from. And, I didn't understand why she wanted to know about me so much. And she like laid me down in the bed, and she was talking to me, and she was just like, you stay in here. You can't go with everybody else. You gotta stay here. And she worked there, but she was Haitian. They had a few Haitian workers there. It was like we were in a spiritual realm, and it was a battle of good and evil. And this is what I felt, and this is what I knew. I don't know how I knew this, but it was the energy that I felt from everybody around. And so there was another man, and he was just like, I don't know, he would sing songs to me like, riding around with that Nina, and just like, they treated me like I was a patient, but they treated me like I was a queen. And so there was a black boy eventually who like guarded my door. I don't know why he was guarding my door. He was going through mental health struggles too, but it was like he was guarding my door so that no one else could come and talk to me. And I don't know who told him to do this or why he would do this, but we really never even had a conversation with each other. It was like we looked at each other in the eyes, and he knew, and I knew that he was supposed to protect me while I was there. Because people did get violent. There were some people who were angry. There was a lot of people dealing with a lot of different energies, and somehow he was there to protect me. And God sent him, or our ancestors sent him. I don't really know. I was in a state of just like really trying to understand why this happened to me, and why I knew all these things, and why I was knowing things about my family members. I was knowing things about my grandma, about our history, about things that generational curses that need to be broke. And I probably sound like I'm ranting, and it's going to sound like a long rant because I'm all over the place with this. I'm not sure how to tell my story, but I'm going to try my best to put it out there in a way to where if somebody can relate to this, to not feel ashamed of what you were going through and what you experienced, because you're not alone. And so when I was going through what I was going through, eventually my brother came, and he had also been diagnosed bipolar before in the past, but at that time he wasn't, he wasn't manic. But I'm not meaning to do the quotes, but that's what it's referred to when you're in this elated state where you're, that a right word, elevated state where you feel like you're connected to a higher power, and they say that as being manic. And so, my brother, he had come to me. He started telling me who I was. He was like, "You're a queen." He was like, "We are queens and kings, and we are meant to be great in this world. And God doesn't like that the devil is attacking you. He doesn't like that." And I don't mean to mix religion with mental health, but I don't know how not to. Because when I was going through what I was going through, all I would hear was like the voice of God. And then at the same time, I would hear like, I would feel energy. I would feel negative energy. There was another hospital. So I went through this for months. I was in and out of the hospital. Just feeling intuition, like feeling energy of other people, knowing things about people, just really confused about my purpose, and just people would talk to me, but I would see their mouth moving and their words, but I would hear something else. I would hear their true intentions. It was like telepathy. I would know what they were thinking, and I don't know how, but I felt like I knew. And a lot of times I could look them in the eyes, and I can see people. You would see them. You see their soul. You see if they're good. You see they're bad. You see things about them. And it was scary, to walk around, to be open, and to feel other people's energy, and to not understand why it was happening to me. I didn't understand. My whole life I had been a really logical person. So for this to happen to me, for me to be in a space to where I'm losing my mind, I know God's not a God of confusion. So I became really confused because, like, why would God allow this to happen to me? Like, I've been a faithful servant my whole life. I've always tried to do the right thing and be a good person. So, why am I going through this? And I would ask questions of why. Then it was like, Christian, you say you're not supposed to question God. So then I would feel bad for questioning. But it's like, let's say, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And I felt like I was walking through hell. Like, there were literally days where I would walk and I would feel like my whole body was on fire. And it would feel like I was burning. And I would just like, I would get paranoid. And one day, I remember, like, I don't know if I'm incriminating myself. I remember walking into a store and just feeling like this is all mine. Like, I'm supposed to have everything that I want in this world. And I was just taking stuff. I was taking everything that belonged to me. And they didn't stop me. They looked at me and they let me go. He just looked me in the eyes and he let me go. And then another time I went to a store, and the man just, he handed me a flower, and he said, "Are you okay?" And I was just like, people would start treating me like I was just this, royalty. And I've always felt like that within myself. Like, I believe that we all come from a line of royalty. But the way that they treated me, it was like they knew who I was. And I was finally here, this queen. And that was how I felt. That was how I felt. But then there were days to where, I would go from feeling really high, like really up, to then feeling really low, and then really depressed and just really anxious. Like, my anxiousness would be so bad that I had to move. Like, I had to walk, I had to run, like I had to get out of the space I was in. And I would walk. I would walk for miles. I would walk to my sister's houses. I would walk, and I lost so much weight. Within a matter of months, I lost like over 80 pounds from just walking. And I couldn't eat bad. Like, I couldn't eat bad food. Anything that was bad would feel like poison, and I wouldn't put it in my body. I would only eat fruits and vegetables. Like, my body wouldn't allow me to eat anything that wasn't healthy. And I would become sick. And it was like I was so sensitive. Like, my skin, you could feel my skin, and it was so soft, like a baby. It was just like I was like a shell. I was a shell. I would see myself doing things, but I was looking from the outside in. Like, even with I was really fascinated with water, and so I would take a lot of baths, and I would let the water come on me, and I would just feel myself go into the water, and I would feel like one with the water, and I would feel just at peace. And then I would take showers, and I would just feel so like home, just like love and just good feelings whenever I was with water. And I didn't understand what I was going through, but at the same time, my brother had experienced it. My dad had experienced it. I remember being a little girl and my dad telling me that the demons were after him, that they were trying to attack him. And I believed him, because why would he lie? I think a lot of us don't know what's on the unseen, so we are quick to judge. But for me, having experienced it myself, where they were after me, and it was like they were after my spirit, and they wanted me to become cold. And sorry, I'm just like, this is a lot, I know, and it's probably not even sounding logical. I may not even edit this video, but I just remember feeling energy and looking people in the eyes and knowing about them and knowing who they were and just knowing things, but at the same time feeling lost, because it was like, at one point my brother was on the same level as me, and he understood what I was going through. And he would tell me, just send out love, send out love. When you bring in hate, send out love. And that was the message that I got from him, because he had been manic, and he had been struggling with mental health for a few years prior to that happening to me. And then there was another point where my dad had been struggling with mental health. He had came and talked to me. And then my cousin-in-law, she had been struggling with mental health, and she had came and talked to me. And then I had another cousin who had been struggling, and that came and talked to me. So it's like they were all telling me their stories before it actually happened to me. So here I was, trying to take it all in, trying to understand, why this is happening to all of us, and why our stories are connected, why they're all based on spirituality, based on religion. And, I haven't studied every religion. I don't know about, I've only been raised Christian. But, from that experience, it's helped me to open up more to just spirituality, and to just understanding energy, and to understanding that, there's a force that's bigger than us. And we don't believe in God. Like, he was the only one that brought me through it. Because I would get this journal, and I would start writing out my thoughts. I would start writing out things and trying to make logic of what's the seen and what's in the unseen. And so I would try to make logic of what I actually knew to be real. And I would just write it all out. And then I would read scriptures, and I would just know things. And like, I had a dream one time about a white horse, and that people were standing in the yard, and we were all just like being judged. And I don't know, something just moved. So, see, things just happen. It's energy. And so, I just remember having those dreams and just feeling like, like I walked through the valley of the shadow of death. And I really felt like I was walking through hell. Like we were living hell on earth. And I was going to come out of it. I was fighting to get back to my kids. I was fighting for my peace. I was fighting for my mom. A lot of our family traumas and a lot of the things that we had been through, I just wanted it to end. I wanted us to be happy, and I wanted us to no longer struggle. And, I felt like God had put a greater purpose in me. And I know that all of us have that. And even though I know that God is not a God of confusion, and that the mania that I felt, it felt so real. It felt so real. And, I'm not sure the purpose of this video is just to tell people, like, I don't try to get as deep and spiritual anymore. I just try to focus on reality now. I try to focus on being present with my family. I try to focus on being present with my kids and just being a part of this reality. And sorry, I'm all leaning in, getting comfortable. But I just, I want to share my story just because in case anybody else has gone through this, and so they don't feel so alone. And, since then I've dealt, those months of, it was like around 2012, those were the months that I was like going in and out of being manic. And so that's why they diagnosed me bipolar. And after that, I would go through periods of really feeling depression. Like if I would talk to somebody, and that's why I learned about being an empath, is because, I realized that I took on people's energy, and that if I was around someone and they were depressed or they were down, like I would eventually start to feel down too, and I would worry about them. I would worry about their life. I would worry about what they were going through. And sorry, this video is going to be bouncing all over the place, but I'm just going to try to tell you like my experience with mental health and of being diagnosed bipolar, and some of the things that I felt and what I went through. So please bear with me. I don't think I'm going to edit this. And so basically, I was in a, I think I forgot what I was talking about. But I was saying that, there's so much that we don't understand. And a lot of people, they research and, they want us to research and do like experiments with me and things. But I don't want nobody to do like MRIs of my brain. And, I grew up being a very logical person. I was in GATE, I could have been skipped a few times. I was really about, education and school and bettering yourself and becoming the best version of yourself and doing everything you could to be basically your greatest self, live up to your full potential. And so that's something that I always had instilled within me. So I think a big part of me struggling with mental health was me being disappointed in myself, me feeling like I hadn't reached the level of success I was supposed to be at. I wasn't where I was supposed to be at financially, and feeling disappointed in myself, on top of, dealing with some of my childhood traumas, and on top of just questioning life and my purpose. And so when that happened to me, it took me a few months of going in and out of the hospital. There was one hospital that I went to, and I met another Asian lady and another, I don't remember their names, and I wish I did. I wrote them down somewhere, and then I ripped up the paper, so I didn't want to be reminded of it at that point. But I remember just feeling so much love from certain people. Like one person even wrote me a letter. Two people wrote me letters while I was at the mental health hospital. Someone wrote me a letter about me and my husband. They told me it was a new dawn, a new life, a new, that I was rose, and that I was supposed to, grow. And, this was a lady who had come into the hospital, and she didn't know me. She wrote me this letter. And there was another lady who had wrote me a letter about God. And then someone had wrote me something in Chinese, and I didn't know how to interpret the letter. But I wish I had kept it, because I would have wanted someone to read it to me. But it was like the people that you write off as, oh, they're crazy. A lot of them are really, really going through things that we just don't, like the average person just doesn't understand. They're going through healing old wounds and traumas, and at the same time they're spiritually open to receiving messages that come into our unconscious mind that the average person, or that we don't normally think about. And even now, like telling this, it makes me very uncomfortable in a way because I don't know who might see this or how people could perceive this story. But it's like I'm telling myself to stop being in fear, to stop worrying about being judged or about people knowing that I'm bipolar. Like, this is a part of my life. This is part of my story. Now I'll be 33 in a few weeks, and this is right around the time that it happened to me 8 years ago. So this is a really sensitive time in my life, and I was running my quote page, and I want to get back into being more active there and talking more and being more open about my life and my story, because I think it's important for people to know that they have somebody to relate to, and that you're not alone, and that the things that you go through, that somebody else has been through it too, and that they came out of it, like the mania, the racing thoughts, the thoughts, like, and we all, it's not a coincidence that we're all having thoughts about God and about demons and about a lot of the things that we don't, you don't just feel comfortable just having a conversation with someone about normally, but I definitely want to feel like the space that I want to create, and that's my goal with my visionary ambition, is to create a space for people of color to discuss their mental health stories. And now that I'm learning about the this diaspora, I might be saying it wrong, and learning more about, our culture, and I'm still learning, so I don't feel completely comfortable with opening up about my spiritual aspects of bipolar, but I'm researching, I'm researching our ancestry, I'm researching our culture, I'm researching things that, because in the end, something that I feel like everything is left up to interpretation, and nobody really knows anything. I feel like we're all just going off of how we feel, what resonates with us, like what gives your body a chill, what makes you feel like it's real, and that's why there's so many religions, and everything causes division. But the message that I felt and what I was going through at that time was just love. Just love everybody. Spread love, be light. And, like, that's why a lot of the people who are bipolar, we're really sensitive to negative energy. We're really sensitive to colors. We're sensitive to, we're just more sensitive than the average person. And really, it's just like, we have to come together to encourage each other, to uplift each other, and to be here now, to be present now. And so that's like what I want to work on now. Is I've been working more on mindfulness, meditation. Since those manic episodes, I've dealt with anxiety and depression. I haven't been manic in years. I get those feelings a lot of times, and I'll still feel the energy of other people, but I don't allow it to consume me. I try not to get so deep into the spiritual realm. I try to just be present and stay focused on what I can control, what's in my control. But I still get anxiety. My intuition is really strong. Like, I was running a page and I would know things about people that were strangers to me. And so, I try to limit my social media. I can't watch TV for long periods of time. I can't watch certain news, because like knowing about death and knowing about a lot of things is like, it's really hard for me to take all that in. And, just learning about myself, just learning that I am sensitive. I learned my personality type. That's something that helped me to be more present, as learning that I was an INFJ, and that's 1% of the population. And so, a lot of people might not be able to relate to me, but just learning that personality type was something that really helped me. And I am learning more about like my life path number. I'm learning more about, I've always been into zodiac, so I know that I'm a Sagittarius. And, I'm just using all the tools and all the resources that are available to help me to become a better person, and to help me to find my purpose and to walk in love and light. And so this was a long video, and if you really watched this to the end, I really appreciate you. And just know that I plan on having more content, and I'm going to talk more about some of my coping techniques and some of the strategies that I use, like to be present and to focus on reality, and to not let those voices or, the thoughts. And I'm going to talk to you guys more about, spirituality, but I'm the kind of person where it's like, I don't really feel like I know anything. It's all a matter of my opinion, And I want to create a space to where we feel open to talk to each other about our mental health, and we can stay where we can encourage each other, uplift each other, motivate each other, and give each other hope for the future so that we don't feel alone. And so thank you again for watching this video. My name is Nina, and subscribe, hit the like button, all those great things, and hopefully we'll be able to create a great community for us all to feel welcome and loved and appreciated for who we are and walk in our truth. Okay, so talk to you later. Bye.